The Housing, Finance, and Policy Committee will come to order, and I will note this meeting is taking place under House Rule 10.01. Ms. Hirsch, please take the roll.
Chair Hausman.
Present.
Hausman, present. Vice Chair Howard.
Present.
Howard, present. Representative Tice.
Vice present.
Tice, present. Representative Agbaje. Representative Agbaje.
Present.
Agbaje, present. Representative Bliss.
Bliss present.
Bliss, present. Representative Gomez.
Gomez present.
Gomez, present. Representative Hassan.
Hassan is here.
Hassan, present. Representative Heinrich.
Heinrich present.
Heinrich, present. Representative Herr.
Present.
Herr, present. Representative Jurgens.
Jurgens present.
Jurgens, present. Representative Olson.
Present.
Olson, present. Representative Farr.
Farr present.
Farr, present. And Representative Breyer.
Breyer present.
Breyer, present. And Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. The next item of business is approval of the minutes from Tuesday, April 5. Representative Howard, have you had a chance to review those minutes?
Yes, Madam Chair, so moved.
Members, any corrections? Seeing none, please unmute yourselves for a voice vote. All those in favor of approval of the minutes? Oh,
Aye.
was
Aye.
Aye.
opposed, nay? I thought I heard a voice just as we were calling it. The motion prevails and the minutes are approved. Members, today we'll begin considering amendments to the Housing Omnibus Bill before voting on passage to Ways and Means. And just a sense of the process, I'm going to move the underlying bill, House File 4376. That was, of course, the governor's budget bill. And then I'll move that, get that before the committee, and then I'll move the DE2 amendment for adoption. That's the one you got the thorough walkthrough yesterday for both the spreadsheet and the language and all of that wonderful testimony that we heard yesterday. And then we'll consider all amendments to the DE2. And there have been some changes from your, and we'll talk those through. And once we have heard all amendments, then I'll move adoption of the DE2 as amended, and we'll conclude with a roll call vote on final passage of House File 4376 as amended. So unless there are questions, we'll get started. Is everyone sort of clear about that step by step? No hands up. So the chair moves that House File 4376 be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. We now have the underlying bill before us. So the chair moves the DE2 amendment to House File 4376. That was, as I said, the one that we thoroughly took a look at yesterday. And members, the DE2 is before us. The first amendment we'll consider is my amendment, the A5. The chair moves the A5 amendment, and I'll give a brief explanation. Lines 1 through 1.3 through 1.7 adjust base funding in fiscal years 24 and 25 to accommodate an increase in funding to the Department of Human Rights each year and removing it from the tails for challenge. Now, just an explanation of that. When the Department of Human Rights saw our language, they realized one of the specifications we were making would have a cost implication to them. And so we had to accommodate that to keep our bill balanced. We couldn't add it over and above. So we looked at one of the areas that we think will be favorably treated in our negotiation with the Senate as well, and which we put significantly new money into to take that small amount of money. Lines 1.8 and 1.9 are a technical fix, renaming Article 2 of the bill. Lines 1.10 and 1.11 incorporate an amendment adopted to House File 2861 when it was heard, but it wasn't included in the DE amendment. I think that was to Representative Howard bill. So we actually heard it in committee. We passed it in committee, but it was just overlooked as we put that DE amendment together. So we're including it now. Lines 1.12 through 1.16 change language in Representative Howard's community stabilization program that would ensure owner-occupied housing wasn't limited to single-family homes. That's the amendment. I stand for any questions or to that last point if Representative Howard has anything further. And I would appreciate member support. Questions of the A5. Seeing no questions, all those in favor of the, if you'd unmute yourselves, all those in favor of the A5 amendment to the DE2, did I hear a voice? Maybe someone's just unmuted. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the A5 amendment to the DE2 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. We now have the A6 amendment. Representative Heinrich, that is, I believe, your amendment. Would you like to move your amendment and explain it to the committee?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On Representative Tice's computer right now, we're together here in State Office Building. Yes, the A6 amendment makes all the spending one-time appropriations instead of adding to the base. Members of the committee and Madam Chair, this is a supplemental budget year. We shouldn't be adding to the base spending. So that's what my amendment does. I respectfully ask you to consider this a friendly amendment. I think it would also be friendly in the sense of making this bill more likely to marry up or match up with the Senate expectations and the House GOP as well. And so that we don't end up in a spot where the hurdle is too high to get over and get some of these important measures through in your bill, Madam Chair. So that's my amendment, and request a green vote. Thank you.
And members, regrettably, I will oppose this because I wish that the needs in housing were one time, but unfortunately, they were bad before. The pandemic has made them worse. So housing needs in the state are going to require an ongoing investment to begin to meet the challenge that we feel all over the state. Members, are there any questions or comments on the amendment? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for bringing this forward, Representative Heinrich. We've heard this in other committees too. I just wanted to speak to this. I've mentioned this in other committees, and Minnesotans are really hurting right now. And I really think this notion of whether it's a budget year or a supplemental budget year is kind of an inside the dome, inside baseball argument that really is not responsive to what our communities are asking us to do. The reality is we have a $9 billion surplus. Much of that is a structural surplus. And we absolutely should be investing in priorities that help strengthen us, not just one time, but in the long term. And as the chair mentioned, housing is a structural, deep challenge that requires long-term investment. And then lastly, I just want to add, I hope that our friends on the other side of the aisle will bring the same fiscal restraint when it comes to tax cuts. We hear a lot on one side, we can't be making these permanent investments in housing and education and childcare. But then when it comes to the taxes realm, it's, Nellie bar the barn door, we can do permanent tax cuts for the wealthy. And so I just wanted to make that overall comment. I know that Representative Heinrich brings the amendment in good faith, but this is kind of an argument we've heard across the spectrum this session, and just wanted to add those comments.
Representative Heinrich, final comments to your amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that, Representative Howard. Yeah, we have a little bit of a disagreement on this one, maybe, and how to move forward. But again, my concern is that there's probably a good chance that this bill is just ends up evaporated, and none of this, some of the measures that I like in the bill, there's a chance we might not see any of it. And a part of that is maybe we're trying to get over a speed bump that I think might be set too high at this point, kind of with the spending in the tails and changing the base. So that's my concern there, and I just don't want it to be. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling it could hold up the passage of this bill ultimately. So thank you for the time, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Howard, for your comments.
Okay, to the vote then, members. You'll unmute yourselves, please. All those in favor of the A6 amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
No.
Nay.
The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. My understanding is the A7 amendment has been withdrawn. Is that correct? The A8 then amendment, the next amendment is the A8, Representative Tice. Would you like to move your amendment and explain it to the committee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'm going to decide not to offer the amendments, but I would like to be able to speak with them all at one time, if that's okay with you.
Yes, would you like to do that now?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, please proceed.
These amendments really reflect our priorities in getting folks back into homes and to achieve the workforce housing Minnesota desperately needs across the board. And I believe that measures such as these will help refresh our carpenters' attention so that we can also feel like we're helping to energize that, getting more folks in the business trades so that we have the people we need to build the housing we need. This bill has the potential to energize our builders. And these amendments are capable of doing just that because we're showing that we're ready to put our money where our priorities are. And we hope that you will keep this in mind as you go to conference committee and have an open mind about what this means to a lot of places. There's a lot of policy in the bill that I do agree with, and there's a lot that I don't agree with. But I think when we look at how do we get things moving, we show by putting the money where it needs to go. And that to me is a lot of what we see. So in the amendments 9 and 12, we're looking, especially the 9, we're looking at allocating $5 million for state funding to establish a new program to provide grants up to $200,000 to assist cities in rehabilitating dilapidated housing. I will tell you, this is exactly how my husband and I got into the rental market. During the recession, 2010, 2011, we had no business at all in the construction field, in the remodeling field. And this was one way we felt we could help. And so we did a total of, and I know you folks are probably saying, we've heard this all before, but we had a total of 13 homes and decided to sell most of them. We only have 5 now. But that was something we really needed to do, was look at these homes and get them back on the market. And we did. There was no money available for anything. And it was a very hard time for businesses across the state. And Amendment 12 allocates $2.5 million in state bonding to create a grant program for public infrastructure needs to increase housing availability. And this is something that is truly something we need to look at, because a lot of times what we hear from folks is by the time we're done getting the permits, doing this, doing that, the lots are so expensive that it's hard to put in anything that would say be a first-time homeowner. When I look at that, I look at the medium cost of that now is anywhere from $265,000 to over $300,000. And that's just sad. When we first started, it was under 100,000. Well, that was a long time ago, but that's what we did when we first started building. Was we built and sold homes, and we did a lot of the split entry homes, and they were around $100,000. So we've seen such a growth in cost on these, and that's why I think these two programs are really important in making sure that we see some growth in those areas. And then when I look at some of the pieces that were part of Representative Hausman's bill, but we're not seeing them reflected in the bill, I think that it really just helps to invest in our community development financial institutions, and they can support deploying capital into local communities across the state very quickly. Building up a strong network of CDFIs, nonprofit affordable housing lenders and providers across the state through these programs will support production, acceleration, and decrease barriers to affordable home ownership, production, and preservation. To me, these are starters in how to get people back again. We have we all know, we're looking for workers all over the place. And after the recession, we lost a lot of our carpenters, we lost a lot of our trades folks. And I don't know that they're feeling the love from the state of Minnesota in that we really do value what they did. And we're making strides to show them that we really do take this very seriously. I know that this is a difficult year. It is not a budget year, but I think that we have the opportunities to say that with some of this surplus, that we put it into programs that really make housing look like it is a priority for the state of Minnesota. With that, thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this time. But I have one more question. Do we have any targets yet?
Well, I think we've done it in a different way this year. Normally, I think the Ways and Means Committee would have acted. In this case, my conversation was with the speaker and I. I wasn't able to spend as much as I would have wanted, but in conversation with the speaker, we got some direction about what we should limit ourselves to. And I don't know if Ways and Means eventually will issue all of them, or if they'll just look individually at each of our, did I come in a way that that the speaker and I had the conversation about. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It does. It's just frustrating. I know it's probably extremely frustrating for you as well. It would be nice to know exactly what we're looking at. And so we hope that we'll be watching Ways and Means then, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so do I understand you are withdrawing 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12?
Correct.
That's correct. Okay. And members, maybe just a word about some of the points that Representative Tice made. Yesterday, there was a testifier who spoke on that particular issue and who said that that our bill, the House bill, contains none of their agenda. And that startled me a bit. I met with that group in January. And so yesterday after the meeting, I went back to their agenda and I saw, I didn't have to look very carefully because I saw HECAT is on their agenda, strongly funded in our bill. Housing infrastructure bonds, overwhelmingly funded in our bill. And the challenge fund, significantly new money in our bill. All of those on their agenda and all of those in our bill. And then I did a comparison on the Senate bill, and I saw that, in fact, the Senate bill didn't add any money for HECAT or challenge, and we did. And so I think it might be helpful to just get a little sense of, at this point, how we look at the Senate's bill and say to ourselves, all those things that are important to us, how do we get them all to the negotiating table in as strong a way as we can? And in some cases, in at least one or two line items, the Senate did, in fact, come in with a significant move in that direction. That enabled us to move some other things into the bill that we otherwise wouldn't have had the funding for. Other programs that aren't included in the Senate's bill. And so the goal at that point is, how do we get as many things to the negotiating table as well funded as we can? And that's one of the judgments we made about some of those line items. I don't know if that's helpful at all to observers, listeners, advocates who might have some heartburn about that. But hopefully you see the strong support, and that is our goal, getting as many things to the negotiating table as strongly funded as we can. Let me see, now I'm just going through the agenda here, moving ahead through those. That concludes the consideration of amendments to the DE2 amendment. And so we'll now move on to adoption of the DE2 amendment to House File 4376. The chair renews her motion that the DE2 amendment as amended be adopted to House File 4376, and then we'll move to the discussion. So all in favor, if you would unmute yourselves. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion prevails and the DE2 amendment as amended is adopted. So we now have House File 4376 in front of us as amended. So before final passage then, members to the bill. Representative Tice has made some comments, but you're welcome to continue to speak to the bill. Do I see any hands up to speak to the bill? Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief since I kind of spoke to the bill yesterday, but just to highlight again, my gratitude to all of the Minnesotans and advocates and members that have helped push us towards making historic commitments across the housing continuum. And a word of hope, I think, to our work ahead is, I think, on a bipartisan basis, there's a lot of recognition of the challenge before us across the continuum of housing. I think that we have a lot of bipartisan agreement that Minnesotans deserve access to a stable, affordable home, and that right now that's unattainable for too many. And so I think that gives us a good grounding to do good bipartisan work and end this session where I think we all want to making significant investments that will make a huge difference in the lives of Minnesotans all across the state. And so I very much look forward to voting for this bill.
Thank you. Representative Hassan.
Sorry if I can only unmute myself. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I want to thank our staff for working on this bill. As you guys know, as I have talked in this committee many times, I truly care about home ownership because it's, as we know, Minnesota has the worst home ownership rates between whites and non-whites in the union of all states. And while I understand that, after the 2 years we had, that there is a lot of need for, investment in affordable housing. But I also want to echo on that there are 60,000 families that are mortgage eligible that could purchase a home today that cannot purchase a home today because we don't have enough units, affordable units that they can purchase. And if we do the math, some of those 60,000 families are in affordable, renting units. So that will free up some space. And I just want to echo on that. I understand that, there is some investments, but knowing, currently that our agency spends 96% of its budget towards rental. And this bill is heavy on rent assistance and on renters. I think that I was hoping, at least it was my hope, that we're going to see maybe a little bit more investment on home ownership. And I'm hoping, I know that you guys have to go to conference committee. And my hope is that Chair Hausman and whoever else ends up in the conference committee with you, this bill will come back with a little bit more investment, because if we truly want to move the needle on home ownership and move the needle on stabilization of families and neighborhoods and creation of wealth, home ownership is the route to go. And I know everyone in this committee knows, I feel like that I'm preaching the choir here, but it will be remiss for me not to say this over and over, because I represent a district that is predominantly renters, and I hear the issue and the barriers of home ownership and the need and the desire from my constituencies to become homeowners. As I see, our neighborhoods and the turnover for families moving in and out all the time, it's just, it gives me a little heartburn to not be able to help those neighbors get stabilized. And I understand, home ownership is not for everybody, but when our communities of color and indigenous communities continuously talking about home ownership as being one of the highest needs that they have, I'm hoping that we'll do things differently and we'll go bold and, put a lot of investment in home ownership. So it's just my last plea with you, Chair Hausman, just to say, when you're in conference committee, that please try to work with the Senate to get those home ownership dollars a little bit more than it is. I understand that we have good provisions, especially with the down payment assistance, but then that down payment assistance won't help if families don't have an affordable unit to purchase. So, and I thank you for all the work that you have done. I also thank minority lead Representative Tematize for echoing on this as well, because home ownership is really important to all of us. Let's just continue on asking for more dollars for home ownership. And thank you very much, Chair Hausman and members.
Thank you. And I think that's motivation for me to do some math before I get to Ways and Means. Because as we put the bill together, because we added new ways of encouraging homeownership that we're bringing to conference committee, we really believe that we are bringing more dollars to the table than the Senate bill does. But clearly, we have to have a visual to show that. And so I think that will be my encouragement to prepare that before my presentation to the Ways and Means Committee. So all of that is clear. I think Representative Howard, you had, for example, you had already done some preliminary math on that.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I can share that around. And it is kind of, as you had mentioned, Madam Chair, we have an issue where there's different parts of our agenda that live all over the budget, not just in our area here. For example, we have significant investments to support homeownership in our tax bill. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us, and it's incumbent on all the advocates that support homeownership that we, in one voice, speak for more investment. And that's going to require the Senate to step up to the plate, because the House is the one that's leading on housing investments across the continuum, including homeownership.
So we'll do a little bit of work on that so we can talk about that a little more clearly. I'm just looking to see if there are any other hands up. Not seeing any. Give it a minute. So we will then, the chair renews her motion that House File 4376 as amended be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Ms. Hirsch, please take the roll.
Chair Hausman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Howard.
Aye.
Representative Tice.
No.
Representative Ekbaje.
Aye.
Representative Bliss.
No.
Representative Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Representative Hassan.
Aye.
Representative Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Representative Herr.
Aye.
Representative Jurgens.
No.
Representative Olson.
Aye.
Representative Farr.
Or no.
And Representative Breyer.
Aye.
Madam Chair, we have 8 ayes and 5 nays.
There being 8 ayes and 5 nays, the motion prevails, and House File 4376 as amended is referred to Ways and Means. I will note for the record that staff is directed to make technical corrections as needed. And with that, I'm checking once more whether there are any hands up. If not, thank you. Oh, Representative Howard.
Madam Chair, if you'll allow me, I just wanted to thank you for your work and your service. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, this could be the last time that you're before us with the gavel as we pass this omnibus bill. And I wish we were here in person. And I just want to thank you for, on behalf of this committee, this legislature, and this state, for your decades of service. I think that we're going to feel the benefits of your leadership in housing and capital investment for years and decades to come. You've always been just fiercely loyal to your staff, to this institution, and we're going to miss you so much. And it's been an honor of a lifetime to be working with you on this committee, and just wanted to share that on this day.
Thank you very much. I was so taken by the process that I actually almost forgot my, some concluding thank yous for the work of the committee, for all the advocates, thousands of people across the state. That partnership, I spoke always of partnership. And while our work is far from over, because that negotiation carries a lot of weight, and we still need all of you and your voices, members and advocates. You're right, we've concluded our last standing meeting of the Housing, Finance, and Policy Committee. I want to thank you for your work this year. I have long said that nothing in life can go well if you don't have a safe place to sleep at night. And the work we continue to do in this committee in the next few weeks will improve the lives of Minnesotans across the state by making sure everyone has a place to call home. And with that, we are adjourned.